Welcome back, guys. In this video, we're going to be talking about chord extensions. So chord extensions are when we take a really basic triad like a major or minor chord and we start adding voices on top of it. And the names of these chords are going to be based off the scale degrees we're adding on top of it. So there's actually one more thing you need to know about scale degrees, and it's when we go up an octave, we don't repeat the numbers, we keep going up. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the octave, we don't keep going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on like that. We're actually going to keep counting up. So instead, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then it ends at the octave. But there's a lot of scale degrees that you can ignore in that top octave. The only ones you have to worry about are the 9, the 11, and the 13. Let's go over how to name these chords. So when we're naming these chords, we're going to start with the bass chord. So it's going to be a major or minor chord. Then we're going to have a number, and that's going to dictate which note in the scale degree we're adding on top of it. So for example, if I wanted to make a D major 6 chord, we start off with our D major, and then we add the 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. D major 6 chord. And that's our new chord. For 7th chords, you get a lot of different possibilities because you can either have a major 7th interval or a minor 7th interval. If I want to make an F major 7th chord, it's going to be our F major, and then we're going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And when you have a major chord with a minor 7th interval, it's called a dominant 7th chord. So let's do F major again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7. A minor 7th chord is when you have a minor triad and then a minor 7th. So let's do C minor. Basic triad, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minor 7th. And when you put a major 7th interval on top of a minor chord, it is called a minor major 7th. So a minor chord, and then instead of a minor 7th, it's a major 7th. When I started making jazz music, I was just adding 7th chords to everything, and that really gave a lot of color to my chord progressions. If I'm in the key of C major and I'm going to do a 1, 6, 2, 5, adding 7ths really brings a lot to it. 2, and then dominant 5. Now there's 2 more 7th chords, and those are for diminished chords. There is a fully diminished chord, and then there is a half diminished chord. Let's take C diminished. So a half diminished chord is when we add a minor 7. And a fully diminished chord is when we flatten it a second time. So you can see in a full diminished chord, it's just stacking minor thirds on top of each other. And then for a half diminished, you have that one major third right there. So those were all the 7th chords. Let's go to the next one. Is it going to be 8th chords? No, because that doesn't really make sense. If I do a C major 8, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that just looks like a regular C major chord. So the next one we're going to go on to is the 9th chords. So for a major 9 chord, you start with a major 7th, and then you add the 9. And for a minor 9th chord, you start with a minor 7th, and then you add the 9. So when we're making chords like a C major 9 or a C minor 9, how do we know that the 9 is going to be here? How come it's not here or here? For these chords, we usually assume that the interval is going to be major unless indicated otherwise. For example, a major 6 chord has the major 6 interval, not the minor 6 interval. And the exact same thing for the minor 6 chord. It still has the major 6 interval. For a regular 9th chord, it's always going to be the major 9th interval. The 11th interval is the same as the perfect chord, so there's no major or minor quality, so you don't have to worry about that. And the 13th interval, we assume that's major as well. There are going to be occasions where you flat or sharpen the 9th, but those are going to be notated differently. So that was 9th chords. We're going to skip the 10th chords because a C major 10 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's just a regular third. That doesn't change anything. So we're going to move on to the 11th now. And it's the exact same thing we're doing before. We're taking our previous chord and we're adding that extra scale degree on top. For the 11th chord, we have a major chord. We add the 7th, the 9th, and then the 11th. And the same thing goes for the minor 11th chord. 7th, 9th, 11th, dominant 11th chord. And this is the exact same thing for 13th chord. So build, 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 9th, 11th, and then 13th. Same thing for the minor. 9th, 11th, 13th, dominant 13th, 9th, 11th, and 13th. By the way, when you're using these chords, you're allowed to leave notes out if you want. There's a specific way that these chords are written down. So if we're taking a C major 7th chord, it's going to be written down as C major 7. If we're taking a C minor 7, it's going to be written down as C minor 7. But if we're taking a C dominant 7 chord, then it's going to be called C7 just by itself. And this applies when you keep going up in chord extensions. So a C major 9 is going to be the exact same, a C minor 9 is going to be the exact same, but when you see a C9 just by itself, that means it's going to start with a dominant 7 with the 9. Let's keep going up. So C major 11, C minor 11, and then C11 is a dominant chord with the 9th and 11. So right now I want to talk about altered chords, and this is when we take a certain note in the chord and either flatten or sharpen it. So the way you're going to write this down is you're going to start with the normal chord, and at the end you're going to explain which note is being altered. A really popular altered chord is the minor 7 flat 5. So let's do this in D. So D minor 7 flat 5. So we start with our D minor 7, and then we take the 5 and we flatten it. And that's our new chord. Another popular one is the dominant 7 flat 9. So let's do it starting from E. So it's going to say E7 flat 9. So we start with a E dominant 7, and then instead of a regular 9, it's going to be flattened. There might be times where you see a chord and then it says add with a little number on top. For example, C add 9. And this means that you're only adding that single scale degree on top of your chord. If I'm playing a regular C minor 11th chord, there is the assumption that I have the 7th and the 9th right under it. But if we're doing C minor add 11, that just means we have the C minor and the 11th. You might see chords where it says C major 6 9, and that just means we're adding the 6 and the 9. A lot of these chords are super complex, and you don't hear them very often. Maybe you'll hear them in jazz or neo soul, but I'm not going to get too deep into them. I just really want to show you how to read these chords. So just in case you see this in a music book or a chord website, you're not too confused. So when is the best time to use these chord extensions? I like to use chord extensions when I want to give my chord a little bit of extra color. I also like to use it to create a lot of fullness, because when you're adding just a lot of notes in a chord, it just takes up a lot more space. But think of the name, it's an extension, it's an add-on, so it's completely optional if you want to use it or not. And it's important to know that if you're using chord extensions, you're still applying proper voice leading. So let's make a chord progression. We'll do it in C minor. Let's start with the minor 1, then the major 7, then the major 6, then the minor 4. So this is our chord progression without any extensions. Instead of a regular C minor, let's do a C minor 9. So we add the 7th and then the 9. And I'm going to bring this 9 down an octave here. So after this, I'm going to go here, and this is a B flat 13th, but we're actually omitting some of the notes. If we're building it from the bottom, you can see that we're going to get rid of the 7th and the 11th and the 3rd. And we're going to have these voices left. I'm going to bring these down an octave here, and it's like that. Because if we have the dominant 7 with the 6th, then there's just like this interval clash that's not too good. So we go from here. Next chord I'm going to do is just a full major 9 chord. So 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, really easy. And the last chord I'm going to play is an F minor 7 chord. So instead of like this, we're going to move the C and an E down an octave there, and then just have the left hand play the bass. So we take this and we turn it into this. So this stuff is definitely good to know, but you have to use it sparingly so you don't overcomplicate it. So make sure you guys are comfortable with your scale degrees, especially for the upper octave. And luckily for that, you only have to know the 9, the 11, and the 13. Everything else, you don't really have to learn about it.